make my slides. Is it okay?
Yeah, we can see it. If anyone else has any problems within the session, you can just send me a message or email. I can just be there to fix it.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to tell my own experiences of doing research in public procurement. So I will be telling you what I've been doing in this area, why I've been doing it, how I've been doing it, and we agreed that I'm not I'm not teaching you. I don't teach any theories. I don't teach you to do research. I'm just sharing my own experiences, and I guess every research process is different, and every researcher does it in his or her own way. So this is my way of doing it. So I hope you have some use of what I'm going to tell you. This is really slow in changing. Okay. Yeah. So I'm currently in Vaasa, in our campus, our beautiful campus. The autumn colors are coming. This picture is from last year. So this year it's not yet that beautiful, but it's coming there. What I'm going to tell you is shortly about my background, then about my research background and the context of my research, and then how I've done my research, about presenting and publishing, and then I will leave some time for questions. But well, I don't mind if you interrupt me. We are just a small group, so you can ask whenever you want to. And if you want to use the chat and I don't notice it, somebody helps me, that will help me. Okay. Yeah. So briefly about my background. I've been working at the University of Vaasa School of Management since 2012. I also work for a small university center at Kokkola. It's north of Vaasa. So Vaasa is in the western coast of Finland. If there are people who don't know where Vaasa is. It's a small town, and Kokkola is even a smaller one. And the university is small. Before that, I was working in Sweden at the Chinese University of Technology in Gothenburg, and before that, I was working at Hanken School of Economics, both here in Vaasa and in Helsinki. And marketing was my major there, and I defended my thesis at Hanken in 2009. Before that, I had quite a long career in the industry, so I wanted to include it here because it had an impact on my research, specifically at the beginning of my academic career. I was working for more than 10 years in purchasing and selling in 3 Finnish companies, and I was simultaneously also training doing adult training in these purchasing and selling issues. My research interests, I will tell you a bit more in the next slide. Some of the journals I published in, and these as well, I will tell you about more when we come to the publishing part. Okay. So the background of my research, how I ended up studying public procurement. In the beginning, I knew nothing about public procurement. That's not where I started. I was first interested about business networks, triads, also B2B context. Then got interested in purchasing and supply, buyer-supplier relationships. And this comes from my practical experience. I got interested to study theories of what I was doing in practice. So I did it that way. Somebody might think that it's the wrong way round, but that was my way. Well, I think that when I was young, I wouldn't have had the patience to do academic research. I wanted to work, to get my salary, to work with people in business. But when I've done that for more than 10 years, I thought that I know about it, now I want to learn more. And then I started my doctoral studies. And actually my doctoral thesis was about business networks and specifically triads in this purchasing and supply context. And why it was so important for me is that I got my cases from there. My former colleagues were willing to collaborate. I got access to interviews. I had some pre-understanding of what I was studying. So for me, this practical experience before academic studies was important. Then at the University of Vaasa, when I began here, right after I applied for a project, it was 2012, this decade, which is nowadays called Business Finland. We got a project which the topic of the proposal was developing relationships and networks in public procurement. So the theories that I suggested here I was familiar with them because it was about relationships and networks. What was new was public procurement, like the context. And that's where it started. When the focus became clearer, the pre-tender market dialogue, that was more or less given by the municipalities we were working with. So in this project, we had 3 Finnish municipalities. And when we knew that we get the money and we could start the project, we had some workshops, meetings, where we considered what would be what kind of research they would need. And at that phase, all these 3 municipalities had thought already earlier that they would like to change their procurement processes to be more effective. And they wanted to try this pre-tender market dialogue procedures. And that was a good opportunity for us to start following. At that phase, I knew very little about public procurement, but what was interesting was that I had quite extensive knowledge of P2P relationships and purchasing and supply and buyer-supplier relationships. So it was very interesting in the beginning to compare those practices in P2P context to public procurement context. And it was very different. So that's how it started. First, we started to consider what is happening in this market dialogue, or this more precisely this pre-tender phase in general. And there was no research that time on it. We wrote a report on it. It's in Finnish. It is in the University of Vaasa publications. But that was kind of the groundwork for what we did later. Yeah, and this project, there was another university collaborating with us, and those people were lawyers, so they knew about the restrictions that public procurement has. So it was quite a good combination of knowledge that we had. Then we just had clarified what can happen in this kind of process. We started to consider how does it happen. So then we came to this interaction, which I was very familiar from the P2P context. And the theories I use there, it's a lot about interaction, how companies, people in companies or organizations, how they interact, how they communicate, how they share knowledge, how they are supposed to gain joint understanding of issues that they are dealing with. So the papers that you had, if you had time to have a look at them, they all have to do with interaction with buyer and supplier. And there emerged a number of topics, number of interesting issues we wanted to study more. There was this service specification co-development, because that is the aim, actually the aim of the market dialogue, to help the buyer to define the service in a way that it is good, the best possible solution for those end users, for citizens like us. Then we dig deeper into these interfaces and capabilities. And there I found in a conference, I found authors from Norway. They had a similar case at that point of time. So we combined our data and compared them and got more information about market dialogue, and specifically about the capabilities that are needed from both sides, from buyers and suppliers. Then you have this paper of supplier switching process that is based on another data set from another, actually from earlier, already started earlier than this public procurement process, or this TECES project that I was telling you about. That was the beginning of public procurement. It was an earlier data set which we started to complement with the views from this specific buyer, which was actually the public sector buyer. And then there are other papers coming, hopefully, how to cross boundaries between two so different organizational cultures, and more ideas coming from this same idea of pre-tender phase market dialogue, which is still quite under-researched. And what is interesting is that this kind of early interaction is not that much research either in P2P context. So most of the research is focusing on what current cooperating partners are doing, how they are interacting. But what happens before they start the actual collaboration, that is very, very, there is not much knowledge about it. Hey, just to clarify a bit more, usually public procurement process is divided into 3 phases. There is the pre-tender phase, there is the tendering, and then there is the post-tender, which is the contract period. And the phase that we've been looking at is this market dialogue, which is here before the tendering. And as we are looking at interaction, tendering phase, no interaction is allowed there, so that's not that interesting from our point of view. Post-tender interaction, of course, is interesting, but there is a lot of research on it. And what is interesting, another phase that we are currently looking at is the phase when the suppliers have been selected and how they begin their collaboration. And when it comes to interaction, here in pre-tender phase, before the market dialogue, usually there are internal, external stakeholders discussing what is the need for our services, what do we need, how we like to, how should we provide these services for our citizens. In the market dialogue, potential suppliers come in the picture. And here, contract implementation, the suppliers are selected suppliers. So there is a big difference on interaction if when the suppliers are potential suppliers, so they don't know if they will be selected. And the situation is competitive because there are competitors taking part in this market dialogue. So it is very interesting and challenging phase to investigate. When the suppliers are selected, the interaction is much more easier. It's like the partners, they know that they will collaborate for some time, so they are more eager to go deeper into the conversations, and it's not a competitive situation anymore. Sorry, I just wanted to say that the arrow in the yellow part, what I'm interested is that this process, because there is always a beginning and there is an ending, and those cases that I've been looking at, they are this kind of regular public procurements where the tenderings happen regularly. So there are and the periods, the contract periods might be like 2, 3, 5 years. So there is very often there is a beginning and there is an ending. And what is interesting that there is also the end of the beginning and beginning of the end. So it's not actually, it's not an arrow, but it is kind of, it is a circle. And if you are a supplier at some phase, you have a contract, then you are not selected for the next period, but the period after that you might be selected again. So that's kind of interesting, and that's why I got so interested in this switching process, what happens there. But if you are more interested in what actually happens, you can read the paper. Yeah, I said I'm not going to tell you to talk about theories. I just wanted to briefly tell why we started, why we thought that this is interesting and important to research. This is probably what you already know as public procurement researchers from research, based on research, and also practical observations. But public services do not always meet the end customer's needs. And the problems have been discussed a lot in research as well. And the practical problems, you can read them in newspapers nearly every day. So how could public buyers take advantage of suppliers' expertise to develop services? And they must, to do it together, they must have a common understanding of services or goods that are needed, but how they would get the common understanding. And that's very important to gain this common understanding at the beginning of the process. And then, you know, there are these legal restrictions and different organizational cultures and such. Yeah, so we came to the conclusion that we want to clarify if some of the problems could be solved by involving suppliers in this early interaction, and we noticed that it is practically relevant research topic as well. And market dialogue, if you are not familiar with it, it's what also the people that we were interviewing, they said it's kind of the basics, it's the groundwork for the whole contract period, for the relationships and for the services to develop. And why is it so important? Further, there are not that good possibilities to make bigger changes in the services, for example, when the contract has been signed. It's not that easy. should be very clear in the beginning what the request for proposal should be, because that defines what kind of services you get. Just an example from our very first study, what happens there. Market dialogue, it can include several different ways to interact, to give information in big sessions, to have this what are called technical dialogues between buyer and the seller, face-to-face or written, facilitate presentations, issues like that to gain a common understanding of what should be procured. Okay, then some of my thoughts about how I collected data, analyzed data. So I've done case studies mostly. Some of them can be called action research, exploratory mainly because it's a new area. Data I've gathered with interviews, observations, documents, studies, whatever information I had access to. And those of you who have done qualitative research and case studies, you know that getting access is one issue. There are people who either close the gate or open the gate for you. For us, it's been mostly the municipalities that have opened the gates and proposed suppliers that we could go and interview. Involving the informants, you know that everyone is busy. You should create a trusting atmosphere to get the informants to talk openly. And it takes time, of course. Then in data analysis, when you do interviews, you usually, well, if you get interested in the topic and the informant is also, informants are interested and talkative, you get a huge amount of data. That could also be as a positive issue because it might be enough for several papers, like our first data. Making the analysis transparent, that's has been a challenge for me. I'll tell about it a bit more later, and this as well takes time. Data collecting, it takes time, yes. This is an example from one of the papers, and an interesting issue to remember is to keep a diary, so that you mark all the dates and minutes and informants so that you have enough information, because when you start the analysis and start writing the paper, you might not remember all the details. This is just an example. And in the papers that you publish, you submit, you have to be very clear about your data collection. It's not enough to have a lot of data, but you have to show that you have collected the data for a certain purpose. And the informants are people that are the right ones. They know about what they are talking. And this purpose, why did we go and for example, observed some discussions. We wanted to feel the atmosphere or see how it's going. So just to be clear that you can show that all the data that you gathered is relevant. Analysis, I've in also earlier papers, I like this systematic combining approach. It's like it fits very well to my kind of way of thinking, that I go back and forth between theory, the case, the framework, the empirical world. I write the paper once, I write the case, I write the theory, and then I notice that it does not match. I need another theory to support, then I change or add, and then I have to go deeper into the case and see if I find something that I didn't pay attention the first time. So this is how I use it, how I usually, in many papers, I've done the analysis with this method. Then another method that I like is this DIA. No, it's not. Well, it's description, analysis, and interpretation. It's an old book that I used already in my thesis, because I had difficulties in telling apart when do I describe, when do I analyze, when do I interpret. So I think this was a good framework for this service specification paper where we look at the process and what is happening in its phase. Thematic analysis, usually there is a phase where you try to identify common themes and patterns of meanings that come up repeatedly. You do usually content analysis, reading back and forth your interview transcripts, for example. So the analysis of qualitative data for me, it's usually a combination of different ways of trying to make sense of the data. Yeah, this is an interesting comment that I got from the Journal of Purchasing and Supply Chain Management editor. I don't remember how, if it was the second or the third or the fourth round, but this has helped me a lot later as well. She wrote that from such an in-depth case studies as yours, we do expect to see much more detailed evidence of the data you have been able to collect. Please consider that in a qualitative and inductive piece, we expect as readers to see a clear chain of evidence leading to propositions. To this end, I would expect to see much more tables or narratives or other formats containing the evidence of your coding effort. At this stage, I do not mind exceeding the required manuscript length, as I would like first to see all the evidence. So before the editor accepts the paper, she or he wanted to see, well, not all the interview transcripts, which would have been like 100 pages or more, but how we could show her that our reasoning is kind of how we put our data in a form that we can prove that it comes from data, that we didn't just write what we think, but to give the evidence. This was a good comment. So what we did, we wrote a lot of descriptions. This is based on this method, description, analysis, interpretation, giving our own examples with our own words, with providing quotes. More of them, you're not able to read it, it's on the paper, but we created many tables, a lot of text, trying to give the evidence. And then at the final phase, we could condense some of it, because now we convinced the editor, and the reviewers got convinced as well. So even though the paper was far too long for this journal, it was accepted, and we managed to condense it a bit at the end. But if the editor and the reviewers are kind of, if they understand qualitative research, they know that it takes a lot of space to give the evidence. Okay. Well, evidence from the other study. There are a lot of tables there as well, narratives, quotes, everything, trying to show that this is really what the informant said, and this is how we have interpreted it. Okay, that's it. And then about presenting and publishing, which is a very important part. Conferences and workshops. I would advise, well, I said I wouldn't give you advice, but this is an advice I give you anyway, to network and to take every opportunity to present your research, because then you have to kind of structure it in a way that another person who does not know anything about your research understands it. And it's very good for your writing process as well. Though you might notice that something is unclear for you as well. If you can't explain it to those who don't, who are not familiar with the research and they do not understand, then you just have to do something. And then you get maybe good comments, and you get a network. I've mainly participated with IMP, IPSERA, big conferences, and that's from my background in B2B. But nowadays, these conferences have more and more public procurement papers. I've never attended these public procurement related conferences. You might have more experiences of those. I just yeah, I don't know. I just have chosen this one, and I've noticed that they are good for my research, and also the fact that public procurement research is getting more and more attention so it's not only B2B research, but many B2B researchers have started to combine like B2B and public procurement. And then I used to attend these smaller workshops, Nordic workshops, related to the theme supplier relationships or interorganizational issues. I like both. In big conferences, the audience probably did not read your paper, but in small workshops, you can expect everyone, or at least some of the audience, to read your paper, and then you have more informal discussions. The journals, this is an advice as well, to check the key topics so that there is something that you can relate your research, to connect your research with. Like in my case, it's purchasing a supply in a strategic context, supplier relationships, it might be tendering and contracting, public procurement for sure. And this is interesting as well because, for example, well, this Journal of Purchasing and Supply Management, I know that they want to have public procurement papers. And for example, IMM, Industrial Marketing Management, I was surprised that they don't mention public procurement in their key topics, because they do publish a lot of public procurement papers. Yeah, and not only to check the key topics, but also what has been written in the paper in the journal earlier. Yeah, these other journals I've been publishing it. I try to remember which journals have rejected my papers. Many, I guess. One was Public Management Review. That was once I thought I could try to publish in one of those as focused on public issues. But I guess I was too far with, like, even though they have, it's about public management, procurement as relationships are embedded there, but it did not fit totally in the context. Supply chain management, I tried once, but nowadays they do have public procurement papers, but at that point they did not like it. Then this is interesting, this tourism management, it's an earlier paper. It's a very good journal, it's ABS4, at least it was at that point. And it happened to be that the context, the empirical case was related to tourism. So it was a good opportunity to try, and it was easy to publish, even though it was such a high-level journal. But what is negative, if you can say, negative thing is that people in the public procurement, they usually do not read this kind of industry specific journals. So there are two sides of it. You get a good publication, but probably not that many reference. Yeah, not many of in your field are reading the paper. Yeah, and here again, publishing takes time. Those of you who have done it know it. These 3 papers that you had for your readings, only one of them was accepted after the first round. I'll tell you a bit more about it because it was a really interesting process. The IMM, I guess we had 3 rounds, GPSM 4, with maybe more. So, and each round takes months, 4 months. GPSM at that time, there were problems. The manuscript was lost at some point. There was half a year between the round. Then I started asking what has happened. So you can prepare, but it takes time. Yeah, this is the interesting review from Journal of Business and Industrial Marketing. So it was accepted at the first round. This was a reviewer number 1, who rejected the paper and wrote quite an interesting comment. This was the only comment. My main recommendation for the paper is thus: first, to decide what kind of creature this paper is supposed to be, and then focus much more rigorously on developing the paper in this direction. It was not very nice, not very nice comment. But the second reviewer wrote, "Very good, thank you for your work." And then the editor made a decision not to send it to a second round, but he made some comments that please do this, and then it will be accepted. So it was a very good process, a very unusual. Okay, I guess this is, I wanted to end with a positive issue. Now it's time for your questions and comments. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you so much, Nanne, for this presentation. Yeah, I was all laughing at this last slide, so it's been a really fun experience. Okay, so now we have about 20 minutes of with the questions or comments. So anyone interested in asking questions, you can just ask, turn on your microphone and ask. And after that, at the end, we're going to have 5 minutes off record. So yeah. Maybe I can start the questions even myself if okay, so I can start the question that I had in mind. We have received, you know, as a PhD student, we do receive that you need to take data as much as possible from different ways for different papers. And what was interesting regarding your own research is that you had one round of really large data gathering and built several papers with different kinds of, you know, the interpretation and analysis based on that. And I really want to see that. Do you suggest this type of things to be done for example, by PhD students? Because I know that the data gathering that you described in the papers has taken really long amount of time. So I was going to ask your opinion on that.
Well, actually, no, I don't recommend it. It was because of the project we had and the municipalities we had. So we had to listen to them. And if I would have been the only one to make the choice, I would have made a narrower data gathering and more focused. But as it was, we wanted, well, the municipalities, they paid also part of the money that we got. So we had to be obedient or listen. And that's what we wanted to do because it was such a new area. So I'm not saying that I would regret. The positive issue is, the negative was that it took such a long time and it was difficult to focus. But as you got like further, you first analyzed one issue, then you noticed that this would be interesting as well, and I tried to make it to include it in one paper. But then I noticed I just had to be more focused for a paper, so I had to leave out issues that I would have liked to write, and then they became papers later. And what was, this is related to presenting your findings, presenting your research, because as I said, I was presenting the first paper in a conference, and then somebody came to talk to me and said that they've been doing similar kind of data gathering. They have similar kind of data that could be collaborated. Then we got, so it's not totally the same data set that I've been using in different papers, but it's combined with other data sets, this time from another country, and there is a paper hopefully coming out at some point with another university from with another perspective. A paper that I suggested that we could work together. It was I was a pre-examinator for the doctoral thesis, and I noticed that I could collaborate with this person as well. So there are both positive and negative sides of it, and I'm sure that if you ask your supervisor, he or she would say that we focused.
Yeah, this is actually really interesting, because in my for myself, I did try to be really, to have a generalized interview process, and it took a lot of time in just transcription, and let alone the analysis of the paper. So I was all thinking of, man, I wish I would have been more focused on a specific thing that I wanted to know. So yeah, this is interesting to see that that recommendation. So any other questions, comments from different participants would be appreciated. If not, I have a lot of questions again based on the papers. Just, you can start your mics. Okay, just to keep it going, I'm just going to ask another question that I was discussing with one of the colleagues regarding these papers, and it was that, is the focusing on service as what is being purchased in the public procurement makes it different from focusing on, for example, goods? Did you need to have different kinds of looking at different perspectives differently from looking at goods? Because we know that services are based on different kinds of interactions. However, when it comes to the tendering process, many of them are decided to be objectified and be put in a very standardized way. So I was just going to ask about your opinion on that, because I know that many of the new research on the public procurement is also considering services and the challenges within them. So I was wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have more experience of services, actually quite little on goods. And I told you that my major was marketing, and I was studying services marketing. So maybe that's why I'm more interested in services. And yes, services are of course more complicated. It needs more interaction, more understanding. You can show the products, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can consider, you see it. But the service, it's kind of it's created together with the user of it. And if you think public services, it's we who use them, and we are all different. We have all different needs and preferences. So yes, I would say that services need more interaction or more complicated. And yeah, I would say we would need more research, and also services are different. Some of them extremely complicated, some of a bit less complicated. I can see.
Yeah, I'm muted. So thank you for the answer. So if yeah, we have Najmuddin. Yeah, you can just start your microphone and ask the question. We do not hear you, Najmuddin. Do you? Yeah.
Hello, Martin.
Hi.
Do you have my voice? Then
yeah, but we can hear you now.
Okay. Hello, Anne Maria. Thank you for your presentation. It was very useful to me. I have a question on our research. We are working on capability building on the supplier side in public procurements in Iran as a developing country. And we are looking for a scholarly outlet to publish our results and possibly a good conference. Could you please give us some recommendations?
Of a conference?
Yes. And journals.
Well, my experience is I was showing which conferences I've been attending, and it sounds like it could be a good IPSERA topic. For example, and Journal of Purchasing and Supply Management paper, for example, that's connected to IPSERA. That's my first kind of suggestion. And those that where I published my public procurement papers, they are all quite positive to public procurement, even though they are not only public procurement papers. And as I said, I don't have experiences of the other, but IPSERA, I would suggest, maybe Matan, you have experiences from that conference as well. They have a track usually for public procurement, or several tracks.
Okay.
My experience, I would suggest.
Okay, so you suggest IPSERA as a beginning step to present.
So you're a doctoral student, aren't you? Yeah. So what I would suggest is the doctoral colloquium at IPSERA, definitely. Okay,
and I, as a PhD student, as a last year PhD student, have a very limited time to have a published paper. Could you please help me good speed with us?
No, I missed your voice. The last
do you
part.
have my voice now?
I can hear it, but there is some disturbance in it.
Okay. Is my voice clear now?
Now it's clearer.
Better, yeah.
Okay. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. I asked if you know any academic journal that has a good peer review speed. Yeah, because I have a limited time to have my papers published.
That's a very difficult question. I don't have an answer to that. As I showed my experiences, one paper went through very quickly, even though one of the reviewers rejected it. And with the other two that you had for your readings, it took a lot of time. And it also has to do, of course, of which level you are starting these papers. These that I showed you, they are of good quality. So that's one. If you want to publish in a high quality journal, it will take time. I have no way of kind of see, but well, one round takes at least 4 months, half a year, and if it's not accepted after the first round, which happens very seldom in the journals, it takes time. But if you aim at some lower level, are you in Finland or where are you? Your thesis?
Iran.
Yeah, okay. I don't know about your categorization. In Finland, we use this UFO, which has the three, like 1, 2, 3 categories, and then we always look at this ABS, international. Okay. So if you aim at ABS 4, then it might be difficult. If you aim at a journal that is not within any ranking, then it's quicker for sure. So that's what you should think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Najmuddin. Any other questions? I can just stop the recording now to have a